Forget what you've been told about eggs being the ultimate muscle building food after 70. That idea has been repeated for years, and yes, eggs are still a solid source of protein. I've spoken about them many times on this channel myself. But today, I need you to look at something very different because new research is changing the way we understand muscle growth in older adults. There is a food that is not only cheaper than eggs, but also easier to find in almost every grocery store. And according to studies published within the last few years, it can actually outperform eggs when it comes to stimulating muscle protein synthesis in people over 70. This is not based on trends or opinions. It comes from clinical research focused specifically on aging muscles and how they respond differently to protein compared to younger bodies. One of the biggest misunderstandings in nutrition is assuming that all protein works the same way at every age. It doesn't. After 70, the body changes in ways that affect digestion, absorption, and the muscle's ability to respond to amino acids. That means some proteins simply work better than others, even if the total protein amount looks similar on paper. My name is Dr. William Lee. I am a physician, researcher, and author, and what I'm sharing with you today is grounded in real scientific findings, not wellness speculation. This is a breakdown of 6 specific foods that are affordable, widely available, and supported by research showing their impact on muscle maintenance and growth in older adults. Each one plays a different role in fighting age related muscle loss, also known as sarcopenia, which is one of the main reasons strength and independence decline with age. Before we go into the list, there is one study that completely reframed how I look at protein in aging populations. Researchers at the University of Stirling in Scotland conducted controlled trials comparing different protein sources in adults over 70. What they discovered was striking. Some non egg protein sources triggered up to 35% higher muscle protein synthesis compared to whole eggs, even when the total protein content was identical. That finding alone challenges a long standing belief in nutrition. The reason behind this difference is not just about protein quantity, it comes down to how quickly amino acids are delivered into the bloodstream. The concentration of leucine, which acts as the key trigger for muscle building, and how the aging digestive system responds to different foods. In older adults, the body becomes less sensitive to protein signals. This condition is often called anabolic resistance, meaning muscles require a stronger or more sustained signal to start repairing and growing. This is where things get important. If the signal is too weak or too fast, the muscle simply doesn't respond well, no matter how much protein is consumed. That is why some foods outperform others in older age, even if they appear equal in basic nutrition charts. It's not just about protein anymore, it's about biological response. And this is exactly what makes today's list so important. Each food we are going to cover has been studied or analyzed in relation to aging muscle function, and each one has a specific mechanism that helps overcome anabolic resistance in a different way. Some work through slow protein release, others through inflammation reduction, and some by improving nutrient delivery or gut function, which indirectly affects muscle health. By the time we reach the number one food on this list, you will understand why some of the longest living populations in the world rely on it regularly, and why a major research institute in aging biology has identified it as one of the most important dietary tools for maintaining muscle after 75. What makes it even more surprising is that it costs less than $2 per pound and is usually ignored in most modern diets despite its powerful biological effects. Now, before we continue, I want to hear from you directly. I read the comments on this channel and they genuinely help guide the direction of future content. Tell me your age and, more importantly, what muscle loss feels like in your daily life. Is it difficulty standing up from a chair, trouble climbing stairs, or just a general feeling of weakness that wasn't there before? Your experience matters here because this isn't abstract science. It connects directly to real life function, independence, and quality of life. Now we begin the countdown of 6 foods that are all cheaper than eggs, all backed by research in older adults, and all available in your regular grocery store. Each one plays a role in helping the aging body rebuild and maintain muscle more effectively than you might expect. Let's go into it step by step. Number 6 on this list is a food that many people associate with outdated diet plans something from decades ago that never really had a serious place in modern nutrition conversations. But in reality, it is one of the most studied, slow digesting proteins for aging muscle support. That food is cottage cheese. At first glance, cottage cheese does not look impressive. It is simple, inexpensive, and often overlooked in favor of more modern protein sources. But inside it is a highly effective form of casein protein, which behaves very differently from fast digesting proteins like whey or many animal based proteins commonly promoted in fitness culture. Casein is slow by design. After you eat it, it doesn't rush into the bloodstream. Instead, it releases amino acids gradually over several hours, often between 5 and 7 hours. In younger athletes, this is useful for recovery during sleep. But in older adults, especially those over 70, this slow release becomes far more important because the aging body does not respond well to quick spikes in protein. It needs a steady and sustained supply. This is where the concept of anabolic resistance becomes crucial again. As people age, muscles become less responsive to short bursts of amino acids. It is not that protein stops working, but rather that the signal needs to last longer to be effective. Fast proteins can rise and fall too quickly, leaving the muscle without enough sustained stimulation to fully activate repair mechanisms. Cottage cheese solves this problem in a very direct way. Because casein digests slowly, it keeps amino acids circulating in the blood for an extended period, maintaining that muscle building signal for hours instead of minutes. This extended window gives aging muscle tissue more time to respond, which is essential when the natural response speed has slowed down. Research from the University of Maastricht in the Netherlands examined older adults consuming casein protein before sleep. The findings were clear. Those who consumed casein experienced significantly higher overnight muscle protein synthesis compared to those who consumed faster digesting proteins or no protein at all. The difference was measured at over 20% improvement in overnight muscle repair. For someone in their late 70s or 80s, that kind of difference accumulates over time and directly affects strength and independence. The timing of this food is just as important as the food itself. One of the most effective ways to use cottage cheese is to consume it shortly before bedtime. This aligns its slow protein release with the body's natural overnight repair cycle. During sleep, the body enters a recovery state where muscle rebuilding is more active, and having a steady supply of amino acids during this period enhances that process. Fat content also plays a subtle but important role here. Full fat cottage cheese is often more effective than low fat versions because fat slows digestion even further. This extends the release of amino acids, reinforcing the prolonged muscle building signal. It is not about calories alone, it is about timing and metabolic flow inside the body. A simple but effective pairing, often studied in nutritional research, involves combining cottage cheese with a small amount of natural sugar, such as honey. This creates a mild insulin response, which helps transport amino acids into muscle cells more efficiently. In this context, insulin is not something harmful. It acts more like a delivery system, guiding nutrients into the right place at the right time. So instead of thinking of cottage cheese as an outdated diet food, it should be seen as a slow release muscle support system that works specifically well for aging physiology. It is simple, affordable, and requires no complex preparation. Yet its biological impact becomes more meaningful as the body ages. Moving on to number five, we shift into something very different, a food that is extremely affordable, widely available, and surprisingly powerful in terms of one specific amino acid that acts as the main trigger for muscle protein synthesis. Without this compound, even high protein meals may fail to fully activate muscle building in older adults. That food is canned tuna. And what makes tuna so interesting is not just the protein content, but the specific concentration of leucine, the amino acid that essentially switches muscle building on. But before we get into that mechanism, it is important to understand why leucine matters so much more after 70 than it does in younger years. Number five on this list is a food that many people already know, but very few truly understand when it comes to aging muscle biology. It is inexpensive, widely available, and often sitting in the pantry without much thought. That food is canned tuna. At first, tuna looks simple. It is just fish in a can, often taken for quick meals or convenience. But when we look at it through the lens of aging physiology, it becomes much more interesting. What matters most here is not just total protein, but the quality of amino acids inside that protein, especially one critical compound called leucine. Leucine is not just another amino acid, it functions as the primary biological trigger that activates muscle protein synthesis. Think of it as the ignition switch for muscle building. Without enough leucine, the body may receive protein, but the actual muscle building process does not fully turn on. This becomes even more important after the age of 70, when the body requires a stronger signal to achieve the same response that younger muscles get from less stimulation. This is where research becomes very clear. Studies from institutions like Purdue University have shown that older adults require a higher leucine threshold per meal compared to younger individuals. In practical terms, this means that even if total protein intake is adequate, muscle building may still be limited if leucine levels do not reach the necessary activation point. Canned tuna performs very well in this regard. A standard serving contains a high concentration of complete protein along with a leucine level that is close to or above the threshold needed to activate muscle protein synthesis in older adults. This makes it particularly effective for supporting muscle maintenance in people over 70 who are dealing with anabolic resistance. Anabolic resistance, as we discussed earlier, is the reduced sensitivity of aging muscle tissue to protein intake. The muscle does not respond as easily or as quickly as it once did. Because of this, the body needs stronger nutritional signals, and leucine plays a central role in delivering that signal. Tuna provides that in a very direct and efficient form. Another important factor is cost and accessibility. Canned tuna is one of the most affordable high protein foods available in many grocery stores. It costs just a few dollars per can, making it a practical option for seniors on fixed incomes who still need high quality protein sources. This affordability is part of what makes it so powerful from a public health perspective. There is also a subtle detail that often gets overlooked. The liquid inside canned tuna is not just water, it contains water soluble amino acids that naturally leach out during the canning process. Many people drain it completely without realizing that they are discarding some of the nutritional value. Keeping a small portion of that liquid can help retain those additional nutrients. Pairing tuna with olive oil significantly enhances its effectiveness for older adults. Olive oil contains oleic acid, a type of healthy fat that has been shown in research to reduce inflammation at the cellular level. Inflammation is one of the key contributors to anabolic resistance, so lowering it helps muscle tissue respond more effectively to protein intake. In simple terms, olive oil improves the environment in which muscle building takes place. This combination is also not new. It has been used for generations in traditional Mediterranean diets, where populations tend to have better muscle health and lower rates of age related frailty. Modern research is now beginning to explain why these patterns exist, and tuna with olive oil is a clear example of a simple but biologically effective pairing. There is also something important to understand from real world clinical experience. Many older adults unknowingly reduce the effectiveness of foods like tuna by preparing them in overly processed or low fat ways, often replacing healthy fats with processed alternatives. While this may seem healthier on the surface, it can actually reduce the food's ability to support muscle maintenance. When used correctly, canned tuna becomes more than just a convenient meal. It becomes a targeted nutritional tool that supports one of the most important aspects of aging well, which is preserving strength and independence. Now we move into number four, where the discussion shifts away from animal protein entirely and into a food that challenges one of the most common assumptions in nutrition, that plant protein cannot effectively support muscle growth in older adults. That food is black beans, and the science behind them is far more powerful than most people realize. Number four is where this entire conversation starts to challenge one of the most deeply held beliefs in nutrition, especially among older adults, that plant based proteins cannot meaningfully support muscle growth. That assumption sounds logical on the surface, but when we look at controlled clinical research, the reality is far more complex. The food here is black beans. Black beans are often dismissed as a simple side dish, something added to meals rather than being the center of them. But from a metabolic and muscular standpoint, they carry properties that go well beyond basic protein content. The key is not just the protein itself, but what comes along with it and how it interacts with the aging body. One of the most important components in black beans is resistant starch. This is a type of carbohydrate that is not fully digested in the small intestine. Instead, it moves into the colon where it feeds beneficial gut bacteria. These bacteria produce short chain fatty acids, which play a critical role in reducing systemic inflammation throughout the body. This connection between the gut and muscle is often overlooked, but in older adults, inflammation becomes one of the major drivers of muscle decline. When inflammation levels are high, the body becomes less efficient at responding to protein intake. This means that even if protein consumption is adequate, muscle growth signals can still be weakened. In this way, gut health and muscle health are directly connected. Black beans help reduce this internal inflammation by improving gut microbiome balance. When beneficial bacteria are supported, the production of anti inflammatory compounds increases, which creates a more favorable environment for muscle protein synthesis to occur. This is one of the reasons why legumes show strong associations with muscle preservation in long term population studies. Research published in major nutritional journals has shown that older adults who regularly consume legumes, including black beans, tend to maintain more lean muscle mass over time compared to those who consume them rarely. What is particularly important is that these results remain significant even when total protein intake is accounted for. This suggests that black beans offer benefits beyond just protein quantity. Another important factor is amino acid balance. On their own, black beans do not contain a perfect profile of all essential amino acids in ideal proportions. However, this is not a limitation when they are paired correctly. When combined with complementary foods such as grains, particularly rice, they form a complete amino acid profile that closely matches animal based protein quality. This combination is not new or experimental. It has been used in traditional diets around the world for centuries, especially in regions where access to animal protein was limited. Modern research now confirms that this pairing effectively supports muscle protein synthesis by providing the full spectrum of essential amino acids needed for tissue repair and growth. There is also a metabolic advantage in how black beans affect satiety and blood sugar stability. Because they digest slowly, they help prevent sharp spikes and drops in blood glucose, which can indirectly support more stable energy levels and better nutrient utilization throughout the day. For older adults, this stability matters because inconsistent energy levels often reduce physical activity, which further accelerates muscle loss. Preparation also plays a role in maximizing benefits. Dried black beans, when properly cooked, tend to retain more resistant starch than heavily processed canned versions. Cooking them slowly rather than aggressively boiling helps preserve their nutritional structure. This small detail can influence how effectively they support gut and muscle health. When black beans are included consistently in a diet, especially in combination with complementary proteins, they act less like a simple carbohydrate source and more like a metabolic regulator. They reduce inflammation, support gut health, and improve the body's ability to respond to protein intake. This is why they appear in populations with lower rates of age related muscle decline. So, while they may seem simple, black beans represent something much more important. They show that muscle preservation is not only about high cost animal proteins, but also about how plant based foods can reshape the internal environment that determines whether muscle growth is even possible in the first place. Now we move into the final section where we reach the foods that represent the strongest evidence based impact on muscle maintenance in older adults, including the number one food that combines affordability, accessibility, and one of the most important biological mechanisms for healthy aging.